All right, we're live. I'm a little delayed. I'm 2 minutes behind. I apologize to everyone who was waiting for this, but I just saw. I just happened to look at Twitter. I always make this mistake. I look at Twitter like before, one last time before like tuning in here, going live. Just anything noteworthy, anything I need to know. Kenny Pickett is wearing number 7 with the Eagles. This is major stuff, right? Do the Eagles have an? I meant to look up the Eagles jersey. Do the Eagles have another guy wearing 8? Let me look. Philadelphia Eagles roster. They have a number 8. I don't know the Eagles well enough. Bunch of guys who don't have. Oh yeah, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Guess he's important. Fine, but I guess that makes sense. Kenny Pickett wearing number 7. We never really talk about Kenny on this show. I guess we could. I always kind of figured like this is a Pitt show. Like the live show is a Pitt show. The morning Pitt is the morning Pitt. Kenny is obviously a Pitt story. I have strong feelings about the situation. I don't have a lot of the facts about the situation, but I have strong feelings about just sort of the perception of the situation, the way everything went down with Kenny. But I mean, I'll leave it at this, and maybe I'll ask Jim what he thinks, if he has any pressing thoughts when we bring him in here in a minute. I just wish Kenny the best. You know, I mean, like, as you guys know, Kenny did a show here for us on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com in the 2021 season. It was perfect timing. It was 3 years ago. NIL was this new thing. We set up to do an interview, a weekly show with Kenny, just thinking, wow, this will be interesting. It's his final year. He decided to come back. What's this season going to bring? We didn't know he was going to be a Heisman finalist, obviously. Never really thought that that's how that season was going to go. Couldn't have really planned it better. And maybe that's the reason we haven't done one since, is because we're never going to get as lucky and fortunate as we were that year. So obviously we have a personal connection to Kenny, and got to know him pretty well. I think over the course of those that season and all those shows we did, those 15 or 18 shows, I think he enjoyed doing it. I know I enjoyed doing it. And so that, and obviously we've known Kenny since probably 2015, 2016, when we first started interviewing him as a recruit. So, I mean, that colors and influences a little bit of what, of what your perception is. But I mean, the whole thing just sort of feels like it stinks to high heaven. And so you hope Kenny got out of a bad situation, or I don't even say that. You hope Kenny ended up in a good situation. You hope he gets a good opportunity at some point down the road. And you hope, he's able to do what he wants to do and be able to do what he wants to do. And so you wish him the best. That's sort of my thought on that. But welcome to the Panther-Lair Show. Not the Kenny Pickett is wearing number 7 show, but I'm sure there are NFL-centric YouTube shows that'll do 15 minutes talking about Kenny Pickett wearing number 7. We won't go quite that far. We'll get close to it, I guess. But primarily we talk about Pitt sports here on the Panther-Lair Show. We get together every Wednesday night for the live show here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Get an hour of Pitt sports talk. Jim Hammett will join us shortly. And we'll also be joined by you. If you're tuning in to the live show, you can post your comments and your questions. The chat screen off to the right. We'd love to see what you have to say, hear what you have to say. We'll read it, your comments, and respond to them. We'll read your questions and answer them to the best of our ability. And we'll have a little bit of back and forth for the next hour. So we hope, you get in with some good comments and questions and have some good conversation, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about with the Blue Gold game on Saturday at Acrisure Stadium. Obviously, transfer portal movement, transfer portal non-movement. Ishmael Leggett making the announcement today that he's going to stick at Pitt. We'll talk to Jim about that as well. But Voodoo IPA wants to know, does the Panther-Lair studio still smell like coffee? Some of it, yes. So the coffee, boom, went down. When I knocked it down, and it got on me, and it got on my chair, and it got on the carpet, and it got on, I have this thing that my computer sits on. I don't know if you can, you see, it's like it elevates it a little bit. Well, it's like partially fabric, and this thing it reeks. It reeks. And it's just getting worse. And so I managed to clean the carpet up pretty well. There was some that got on the wall back here. I was able to take care of that. My chair still kind of smells. In my mind, I'm sitting in wet coffee, even though it doesn't feel wet. But in my mind, your mind is a powerful thing. But this thing that my computer sits on, I might have to replace this, because I don't know how I'm going to clean it. It's like this weird spongy kind of, and it just stinks. I mean, it smells bad. Like, imagine the worst, like, 50s grandpa, couch, right? That probably smells like cigarettes and coffee and all that. And I mean, like, the Panther-Lair Studios don't smell like cigarettes, but this thing reeks. So Panther-Lair Studios getting better. I appreciate your concern, Voodoo IPA, but some of these things, there might have to be some replacement items. All right, let's bring in Jim. Get this serious conversation started. Jim, and I don't know if you were aware, I spilled coffee in the Panther-Lair Studios the other day, and it's I keep cleaning it up. I found there was a big stain over on the wall, so I cleaned that up today. Most things you're getting, the whole area doesn't smell anymore, but this thing that my like I don't know if you see that it's like sort of cushioned a little bit. It stinks, man. So do you have any solutions for getting coffee out of things?
No, and I was thinking about a story. Like last year, I was driving down to practice, like coming in from Johnstown, and I stopped at Sheets and got or maybe Dunkin' or something. They didn't put my lid on tight enough, so I'm driving down the road, and of course, I don't like pack clothes, so like I had to had to stop at a Walmart just to buy a shirt, just to go to work. So,
oh wow, that's
just walked into Walmart with a big coffee stain right on my shirt.
But you walked out without one, so that's pretty quality. That's the worst when those coffee places, they don't put the lid on, because you like squeeze it and then you burn your hand because it pinches and it all runs over, and
it's all over the car. It's everywhere.
That's a mess. That's terrible. Was the coffee black, or did you have like some cream and sugar in it to make it like sticky too?
I think there's some cream in there. So yeah, it was just I had to stop and buy a new shirt. I couldn't walk in front of Jerry DiPaolo with a coffee stained shirt.
What'd you buy? Did you buy like a polo or like a knockoff band shirt, or what'd you get?
I think it's just like a plain like hoodie or something. The most basic thing I could find.
Jerry would never wear a coffee. I don't know if Jerry drinks coffee, to be honest with you. So I don't want to speak for him, but I don't know how people in this business don't drink coffee. I don't know how people in any walk of life don't drink coffee. So, what can I say about that? But anyway, stuff happened. Ishmael Leggett's coming back. We expected that to be, but it's always, good to sort of see it as official as it can be on April 10th. Not a big surprise there. I keep forgetting they have 4 open spots, not 3. I keep saying 3, but it's 4 open spots because I keep forgetting about Michael Hewitt's scholarship, and then I end up counting, and there's 7 returning players, 4 open spots. And Brock 01 wants to know, as far as, and we'll talk about Leggett in a second, but in terms of portal targets, and maybe you can fill us in on some of these guys, whatever you know about all or some of them. He says, so as of now, the portal targets for Pitt basketball are Corin, Dunn, Brown Jones, Gale, Williams, and Townsend. You have do you have at least a thumbnail on a few of those guys?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest one we're watching out for is Cam Corin, because he's visiting this weekend. He's the Florida State transfer, 6'10". I think he had his season high against Pitt whenever Pitt played Florida State at the end of the season, and
he killed him.
Yeah, and I was down at the ACC tournament. I sat right behind the Florida State bench, and he's all of 6'10". So I mean that is your replacement for Federico. So I mean, I think his numbers. I think there was concerns like his rebounding's not that high, but I think he brings you a little more offense from that 5 spot. I think they were kind of missing that with whatever Federico was on the court. So I mean, I think that's one they're going to try to lock down right away. I mean, I think he's visiting this weekend, and I'm sure the pressure is going to be on to get a commitment. So I mean, that's the one we're watching for. Obviously, Mikal Brown Jones is, he has Pitt in his top 3. I mean, there's beliefs that he may be trending towards Ole Miss. And I think Damian Dunn from Houston, I think that's one to watch. And I think that one kind of feels like Jamarius Burton to me, because he was a talented player at Temple. Then he goes to Houston, and he was kind of lost in the shuffle. He only averaged like 7 points a game, but Houston was so good. I don't think that was indicative. And I think that's kind of what happened to Burton. He was on a good Texas Tech team and just never really didn't have that role. So, I mean, I think they're kind of looking at maybe Dunn to come in and, really, resurrect his career. So, I mean, those are the 3 names I'm kind of watching out for. I mean, obviously, we're still waiting to see who else visits this weekend. I mean, we know about Corin. We know they have, who was it, Derek Dixon, the 2025 recruit. So I'm expecting maybe 1 or 2 more guys in town as well.
Yeah, yeah, and these lists, I mean, move and change so quickly. I mean, they had guys that, oh, they were definitely the favorite for. They were going to land. Who was that guy? They were definitely going to get. It was like a
Brandon
sure thing.
Johnson.
Yeah, Brandon Johnson. It was like, yep, locked up. And then all of a sudden, he visits Miami, and there he goes. It's like it's all over the place. Some of these guys don't even need to visit schools. It's just. And speaking of guys who never visited, I just because I noticed it the other day, Dior Johnson was a junior college All-American. Did you see this? He
I did
finished
see
his
that.
junior college career as an All-American. So,
We always talk about like leaving like Twitter notifications on.
oh yeah,
I've
yep.
left Dior's on, and I think I'm going to leave them on.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, I don't know what Dior's future is, but it's going to be interesting. I know that like he's not going to go away quietly, like, and he doesn't even. It's not like he like tweets like Paris Ford. He mostly just retweets things that people say about him. Like retweets
Mhm.
nice things. But wherever he goes, it's going to be interesting. And there's been different discussions about it. We probably have talked about it here. I don't want to get back to the Pitt transfer situation, but there's been conversations on the message boards as well. Like, where do you think he ends up? Not necessarily a school specifically, but like what level do you think Dior ends up? High major? Does he have to settle mid major, low major, D2? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I could see him surfacing like maybe not at like a high major, but like a program that would be still pretty competitive, like a UNLV or something like a New Mexico State, like what? Because he's already, I think he's playing in a Texas school right now or something, and I think
Yeah.
those schools usually tend to go for junior college players. I mean, it's not you don't really see a ton of them in the ACC, but like in the Mountain West and some of the West, because wherever there's more junior colleges, it seems like that's where they recruit. So I mean, I could see him ending up in like a Mountain West type situation.
That'd be interesting. UNLV, yeah, that would be interesting. I just don't know. Like you wonder just how many red flags there are. Like at a certain point, are there just too many red flags, and is it just too? Is it too much? I mean, it's going to take like I guess you only need one school, right? You need one school
Yeah.
to say, "Yep, we're okay with this situation." But anyway, getting sidetracked there. We talked a lot last week about priorities and kind of how where the guard position moved in terms of priorities in the portal after Bub Carrington left. You still rank it like 2, 4, 5? Is that kind of your priority list, or how do you see it?
I think so. I mean, I think you need a high impact player as a guard and probably at that forward spot. I mean, I think Cam Corrin's a pretty ideal center fit. I mean, I don't think that's someone you're spending a lot of your funds on. I mean, but he's also someone that, high pedigree, former 4-star recruit, and he played in the ACC. So, he can play at this level. So I think that's targeting a center of that nature. It makes sense. It's kind of a known commodity. So, I mean, I think they're going to try to aim a little bit higher. We'll see if they can get Brown Jones. I mean, I think that's a tough one to win. I know they reached out to the Terrence Williams guy from Michigan. I think it changes almost hourly, every day. So I don't know exactly who they're going to end up with, but I do think they need some scoring from the 2 and the 4 spots for sure.
Yeah, I still get the impression and sort of hearing that they still want Ishmael Leggett to come off the bench. And I'm sure, and I think we've talked about it before. I know I've said it a million times. It's a moot point when he still plays 33 minutes. It doesn't matter if he's on the court for the tip off or not. But it seems like they like him coming in at that first sub. You know what I mean? They like him coming in and I don't know, adding something, that spark or whatever you want to call it. Uh, I don't know. Like, do you like what? Do you think? Do you see that too? Do you see like an intention to do that? Maybe to go get another starter out of the portal for the 2 spot? And do you see an upside in Leggett continuing to work off the bench?
I mean, I in a sense because it creates an important role for a guy like Zach Austin. Like I don't know if Zach Austin's like thinking of leaving or going somewhere else, but it's like he's still a starter. But when it comes, in crunch time, it's going to be Leggett out there more often than him. So I mean, I think so by bringing Leggett off the bench, you kind of keep more people happy, if that makes sense. I think it kind of keeps things balanced in a way. But I mean, he was third on the team in minutes played last year. He'll probably be top 3 again this year. So I don't think it really matters. But again, it also kind of creates a bigger role for someone else. And, that might be easier to sell out of the portal.
It'd be huge if Zach Austin could become something consistent and reliable and productive.
Yeah.
On both ends. Like if he could, and maybe he's, maybe it's always going to be chaos points. You know what I mean? Maybe it's never really going to be in the flow of the offense that they run plays for him. That it's all like putbacks and scrambles and loose balls. But I mean, that's fine. He's just got to do it consistently. He's got to be able to, and I mean, it's hard to consistently sort of predict chaos, but he's got to be more consistent defensively. And I think he could do better rebounding than he did. I forget what his numbers ended up being, but he wasn't in the top 3 of rebounding, right? Because I think it was Leggett, Carrington, and Hinson were the top 3 rebounders, I believe. And so unless he was above one of the centers, I mean, I think he's a better rebounder than that. And he's been a better rebounder. He was a better rebounder than that at High Point. He put up better numbers than that. So, I mean, they need more consistent rebounding. They need more consistent defense out of him. That could be a major impact on this team, though. If Zach Austin becomes something of a consistent player, I think it just opens up the possibilities of what they can do and how they can do it and sort of the rotations they can get and how good they can be. I mean, because of the position he plays and the talent he seems to have, he could be like an X factor for this team. You know what I mean? That really kind of makes a difference for them. Maybe even steals a couple wins for him, if he has a couple like big games. You know what I mean? Almost like the taller Nike Savandi, like we talked about last year, that he was supposed to be like this like 6'6" or 6'7" Nike Savandi, but he never really turned out to be that,
Yeah, I mean, he's the best athlete on the team. There's no question about that. I mean, he did some incredible things on the court. I think in the last game of the year against North Carolina, he came out of nowhere and just had like a block that North Carolina is a really athletic team every year. And I think even their guys were like looking like, whoa. So, I mean, he can really change the game. And Jeff Capel kind of talked about it like throughout the year. And he just he needed to get used to playing in the ACC. I think that was kind of a big hurdle at first. I think just kind of, this is you're expected to do more. And I think that was something that kind of held him back. But I think he embraced his role better down the stretch. I mean, you want to see that shot go down a little bit better, but he was shooting it with more confidence. And, whenever he got the ball, it's not like he hesitated. He was ready to shoot. So, I mean, I think the key for him is just become more consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Who is this? Tommy Grahams says the priority list for him would be 2, 3, and a 5. I don't really see a 3 being, I mean, a 3 insofar as it being sort of interchangeable with a 4 in the way they play them as sort of just kind of generic wings. But I still think, I think they're looking for someone who's closer to that kind of traditional power forward spot. I think that's what they need, is someone who's closer to that sort of traditional power forward spot. And unless you think Zach Austin can move to that power forward spot, which I don't really think he can. And we've talked a lot about Guillermo potentially doing it in the past. I think between Austin, Jorge, and then the potential of a 3-guard lineup with Lowe, Leggett, and a transfer guard, I don't really think another small forward wing is really too much of a need for this team.
No, I mean, I'd say like 3 in the sense that like the 3 and 4 are interchangeable, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just saw our group text go, and I was like, I wonder what he's talking about. It was Matt Steinbrink, so I was trying to read my text.
Yeah, Matt,
I might have breaking information.
Yeah, I don't know. But do you have a Mac? Do you have a Mac computer? I forget.
I do.
Yeah, so it shows up on your computer, right? The iMessage shows up. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So I
saw Matt.
Well, we'll have to see. We'll see what comes out of those text messages. Nuclear Nadal wants to know, did Pitt reach out to Townsend? I forget Townsend's first name. What's Townsend's first name?
I forget as well.
Yeah. Oh man, we're doing a terrible job. All right, who's going to find it first? We're both trying to look it up.
Oh, the Oakland guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if they reached out to him. I think that was like one. I think people are assuming they're going to reach out to him, but at the same time, he played really well in the tournament. I mean, he kind of got overshadowed by the other guy from Oakland, but he was really good in those 2 games. And
yeah,
it's one of those like the long line, a list or whatever they say about a transfer. So I don't know if I don't remember seeing a tweet that said Pitt has actually reached out to him.
Connecting him. Yeah. Let me, it's Trey Townsend, by the way. It was his, I don't know if we actually said his name, but, well, I just searched Trey Townsend Pitt on Twitter, and there's nothing that pops up. So no results there.
More wishful thinking on the board, I think.
Yeah, maybe. He averaged 17 points per game, shot 38% from three, 46% from the field. Yeah, I mean, average 8 rebounds per game. I mean, yeah, sign me up. Seems like a pretty 6'6", 228. Like, you take that. I mean, that's pretty good combination. Pretty good. It's the kind of guy that they need. I mean, that's a four, the kind of four that they need. But yeah, I haven't really seen any real connection there. I guess the last thing on this basketball, as far as Ishmael Leggett goes, what do you feel like is the thing he needs to do better next year? Like, aside from like, oh, he has to be consistent all season long or something like that. Like, is there a skill you look at with him you like to see him either emphasize or just be better at?
I'd like to see him, set up his teammates a little bit more because I think Pitt has had a lot of success with not just playing multiple guards, but playing multiple point guards. I mean, a lot of Lowe and Carrington, a lot of Burton and Cummings the past 2 seasons. So, I mean, I think having that, him being able to facilitate, set his guys up, and I don't think his assist numbers were all that great. He kind of came in and did his scoring, and obviously he was the team's leading rebounder, which is very surprising. But yeah, I'd like to just see, kind of him evolve maybe with a guy that is not necessarily the point guard, but a guy that can run the offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree about that. And they didn't need him to do it last year because of having Bub and Jalen, but depending on who if they bring in a transfer guard, depending on who that is and what they can do, you might need more of it. You might need another ball handler. I wonder if you think of Brandon Cummings. Brandon Cummings is more of a shooter, right? Than a one or a backup point or a ball handler.
Yeah, because I think in that for his high school team, I feel like Malik Thomas is kind of running point more often than not. I think Brandon's kind of playing off the ball. So
Yeah, they
it's
should go
not
get
this.
him then.
Yeah, they should try to get that Malik Thomas. I hear he's
Yeah,
pretty
maybe,
good.
maybe that would be a good option. Maybe go get that guy.
Yeah, see if he could leave high school early. I wonder if anyone's asked that question yet.
I don't know. Not yet. We're already 25 minutes into the show. So Tommy Grams wants to know what's going on with the dude Thero. Did we bid adieu to this, or are we still holding on to the possibility?
I think it was trending not towards Pitt, but I don't know where it's going because obviously there was some big news in college basketball in the past couple of days.
A little bit, little notable. It kind of the John Calipari thing. I was trying to think. It reminded me of somebody else. Oh, I mean, it kind of reminded me of like Jamie Dixon, right? Like a fair amount of success at a school, and then it gets to a point where it's just like, man, maybe you should just go somewhere else. And the coach is like, man, I think maybe I'll just go somewhere else. And nobody really fires anybody. Nobody really quits. They just decide just to walk away, and they go off to somewhere else. And Calipari will have success at Arkansas. I think he'll be fine there. But I don't know. It just kind of feels like that. And I mean, it's not necessarily entirely the same thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure Kentucky ate some of the buyout, right? I mean, they're not. I haven't read the details of it, but I'm sure they're not making Arkansas pay. Like, they're opening the door for him. They're saying, "Go ahead, just go ahead." And that's kind of what Pitt did with Jamie Dixon,
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels similar. I mean, I think whenever I was reading something, whenever they lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four in like 2015, they had the 38-0 team. It hasn't
Mhm.
felt right. It hasn't it hasn't been the same Kentucky, and I think they haven't won a tournament game in the past 3 or 4 years. So
Yeah,
it's just weird how that all worked out. If you really think about it, this all started because Andy Enfield wanted to get out of USC, so he took the SMU job. That's not how like John Calipari was supposed to go. So it was like Enfield went it was just like a weird chain of events. Then Musselman goes to USC out of nowhere,
right.
leaving a pretty good Arkansas job on the table. So usually the coaching carousel doesn't start down here and work its way up to Kentucky. It goes the other way around. So it was just a weird turn of events in college basketball.
Kentucky fans, they'll boo Calipari when Arkansas plays there, right? Like, it's not like they're going to respectfully clap for him, right?
Yeah, yeah, probably. I mean, I think that's like one of those ones like over time, like everyone's gonna look back on the Calipari era like as a good one, but like in the moment right now, his first time he goes to Rupp Arena, it's probably gonna be loud.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. random question here before we get into the blue gold game. Marco Tyner wants to know Mount Rushmore of Pitt football in the 21st century. He suggests Larry Fitzgerald, Darrelle Revis, LaShawn McCoy, Aaron Donald. What do you think?
I don't have too many complaints with that list. I mean, is it like NFL players or college career? Because I mean, like Kenny Pickett was a Heisman finalist.
This is what I was going to say. I mean, if you want to talk about how they did at Pitt, if you want to talk about their Pitt careers, I mean, you could make a case for Kenny Pickett. You could make a case for Jordan Addison. You could make a case for Kalijah Kancey. Darrelle Revis was never an All-American. You know, Kalijah Kancey was ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Kalijah Kancey was a first-team All-American, in addition to being a first-round draft pick. I mean, you could make a case. And now Revis was awesome. I mean, he was outstanding. He was a dominant player at Pitt. But I mean, like Kalijah Kancey was dominant. You know what I mean? Like Kenny Pickett had a dominant season. Jordan Addison had a dominant season. Revis, I guess, was dominant for 3 years. Maybe that's one distinction to make. But I mean, those guys, you can make a case based on Pitt, based on what they did at Pitt. I would say those three guys at least. Is there anybody else that that could have a claim there?
I mean, just like running back alone, James Conner's 2014 season, didn't he lead the ACC in touchdowns, or has the record for most touchdowns in ACC history?
Yeah.
It's like something like that. I mean, like his 2014 season was really good, and he ended up coming back and doing pretty well in 2016. I mean,
Yeah.
I think numbers wise, he's ahead of McCoy in like some all time numbers.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to put. Like he put up big numbers, but like LaShawn was just better.
No,
you know,
I know.
I feel like Revis is the guy to like potentially pick off here, and that's crazy to say, but like to me, I mean, Fitzgerald and Donald are obvious. I don't know. There were just so many games over those 2 seasons where McCoy just carried the team. You know, he just was the absolute reason any success they had it because of him and the defense. The defense really was great by the end of 2007 and was really good in 2008. But I mean, there were so many games where he just carried the load, even losing efforts, just did it all. Maybe, and I mean, like I wouldn't say that James didn't do it all in 2014 because he ran the ball about 6,000 times. But anyway, yeah. Fitzgerald and Donald are obvious. I think you can have debates about some of those other guys, and it's debates that we have about retiring numbers and college career versus pro career and all of that. And it's, I mean, it's why we have those Mount Rushmore conversations, because it's just kind of, silly debates and whatnot. Peninsula P agrees about Kenny Pickett. Anthony Tennyson says that Hugh Green should be on every list, even lists for the centuries when he didn't even play.
He was just that good.
Tony, man, we're talking about the 21st century here. This was like when I did a Morning Pitt episode of like the Pitt basketball Mount Rushmore of the 21st century. And somebody was like, dude, I can't believe you're leaving Charles Smith off the list. And I'm like, I don't know what to say here.
Yeah.
Is Blake Hinson on your 21st century Pitt basketball Mount Rushmore?
It'd be hard to keep him off.
That was like that was the debate I was having. I mean, Brandon Knight was the obvious one. DeJuan Blair was an obvious one. I think I said that I would put Hinson there, and then for me, it was even a bigger question of like, who do I have as my fourth guy? And I think I ended up siding with Levance Fields. But some people were talking about Sam Young. Some people were talking about Julius Page or this guy or that guy. But Knight and Blair are, like, you're on board with those two, right?
Yeah, I think
Brandon
those
Knight
are probably like the two unquestioned that have to be
right
on there, because they were like two different eras, but like they were the centerpiece to both of those teams.
Right. So then who are the other two? Hinson and who else?
Sam Young was really good. I mean, I'm trying to think, like Aaron Gray was an All-American for, I think, third team All-American.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, shout out to him. I can't say I ever would have thought to put Aaron Gray on a Mount Rushmore of the 21st century. I would put him on the Mount Rushmore of 7-foot-tall Pitt basketball players in the 21st century. Yeah. So it's like him and how
many
other 7-footers did they have?
I think He's listed as a 7-footer.
Is he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, shout out to him. Good for him. Good for him. All right. All right. Enough of this. If you have did you have any? So that's it. Aaron Gray and Blake Hinson.
Now, I would say Sam Young. I think I'm a Sam Young guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anthony Tennyson says he knows that we were talking about 21st century. He was just making a joke. All right. Blue Gold game draft today. They drafted the rosters for the spring game. And probably the most notable thing to come out of this, Jim, I don't know if you saw it. I tweeted it. Gavin Bartholomew was doing an interview with us afterward, and I noticed he's got a little bracelet. You know these bracelets that kids have these days with like just letters and you can make your own thing? He's got an El Barto bracelet. El Barto. This is the nickname I've given him for the past like year and a half, 2 years. El Barto. And he is embracing this. And I don't know if he knows that I started it, but he's embracing it as by christening himself El Barto. And I think this is the bigger. I mean, like this is like a top 5 news story out of the day. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more traction. I tweeted it out like right at the end of the press conference. I thought like the fan or somebody would be calling me to talk about this, but nobody's really picked up on it. National news is ignoring this story. The national media is ignoring the story that Gavin Bartholomew has taken up the handle of El Barto. Like, I don't know how people are missing this, but I digress. Did you follow much of the draft? Like, as either I was tweeting it or posting about it or anybody else, or like, have you looked much at the rosters or paid much attention to the draft order or anything?
No, I was running errands during the draft, so I had to check the roster afterwards. I didn't watch it in real time, so sorry to disappoint.
You missed out. So, I mean, if anybody doesn't know the format, the players sort of draft out their teams. The seniors get drafted by the coaches to one team or the other, blue or gold, and then the seniors do the drafting of the rest of the team. And then the way they do it is whoever's drafting, whichever, blue or gold, they pick a player and it starts that player's position. So when Kenny Johnson was the first overall pick, it was all the Z receivers after that. It was X receivers. It was Kenny Johnson and then Cam Montero and then Thaddeus Shaw, and then they were done with the X receivers. So they kind of go by position. It keeps it sort of balanced between the two teams. And probably the most interesting pick of the entire draft came in, I think, the 7th round. Blue opened the quarterbacks, finally. Got to quarterbacks, and they took Nate Yarnell. No surprise there. Then gold went, and gold took Eli Holstein. And I'm not sure there's a more notable pick that was made in this draft. And I mean, we've talked about Eli Holstein passing up Christian Baer, moving up to the number 2 quarterback spot in the depth chart, behind Nate Yarnell, that we had been hearing that this was kind of happening, or Holstein was pushing Baer or competing with him, or, pushing him a little, whatever it is. To see this today, where the players are making the choice, where the gold team with captains, there are 4 captains that were making the picks, and the 4 captains were the aforementioned El Barto, Daniel Carter, Donovan McMillan, and Rashad Battle. And these 4 guys sat there and said, okay, do we want Eli Holstein or Christian Baer? And they went with Holstein. Like, I'm not reading too much into that, right? I don't think it's possible for us to read too much into that. I think it's like clear as day, isn't it? The writing's on the wall about this one, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started to talk about it and kind of set the stage for this a few weeks ago, but I think it's just been gaining more traction, each and every day throughout the spring. So, I mean, I do think Eli's ahead of them right now, and I think, they let some people into the scrimmage this weekend, and I'm sure they probably kind of found out that that's kind of where things stand as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think it was pointing in that direction, but I mean, it's interesting, and you have to go into this. It's like everyone here is learning a brand new offense, so everyone was kind of on equal footing in one way or another. I mean, probably not Nate Yarnell. I mean, I think someone had to be the first person to take a snap during practice, but I mean, for everyone else, Eli Holstein and Christian Baer were on equal footing, so I think it's pretty telling right now that the teammates or the team itself kind of think Eli's ahead.
Yeah, and and it's not just that the coaches have moved them ahead and give him the second team reps or whatever, but that Gavin Bartholomew and Daniel Carter are like, yeah, this is the guy we want. Like, this is the quarterback we want, not the guy who started games for us last year, not the guy who beat Louisville, but this guy, this new guy from Alabama. I think it's really interesting, and I think that endorsement to some extent, I mean, I think you have to at least keep open the possibility that he ends up by the end of the summer pushing Nate Yarnell for the starting job. I still think Yarnell is going to be the starter. Gun to my head, if I had to put money on it and all that stuff, I think Yarnell will be the starter all season. I think he'll be fine. But for Holstein to do as well as he's done, to the point where he's, for the coaches and the players, past Christian Bear, I mean, in a short time, because they know Bear, they have a relationship with Bear, they've been around him for a year. For Holstein to make that move, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility, right? Like, I think that there's at least a crack. The door's open a crack for him to potentially even push Yarnell when he gets to training camp. Wouldn't you think?
I would think so. And I mean, even if not, like, just looking at the past 2 seasons, Pitt's needed more than one quarterback to get through a year. I mean, how many guys have started a game since Kenny Pickett left? I mean, you have Slovis, Patty, Yarnell, Jerkovic, Bear.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you've had a lot of quarterbacks over the past 2 years. So you're the number 2 guy. I mean, you're one play away. You're one bad first half from getting into the game in the second half. So I mean, I think that's big for Eli Holstein. I mean, I'm with you. I kind of think if there was a game tomorrow, it's going to be Nate Yarnell, and even projecting ahead, I think it's going to be Nate Yarnell. But he's in a position to get on the field, and I think that's kind of the goal of his, coming out of the spring.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, like 2 years ago, they started 3 different quarterbacks, but that was due to injuries. Last year, they started 3 different quarterbacks because they had to, because they wanted to. I saw that, I forget who it was, Dane Brugler or somebody had Phil Jerkovic as his number 36 quarterback prospect in the draft.
He didn't even work out as a quarterback.
Dear God, could you imagine if you were ranked below him? Like, if you were ranked at like 37 or 38, you're ranked behind a guy who didn't even throw a pass at his own pro day. That just sort of feels like a guy who maybe did his pre-draft rankings a while ago and didn't really, feel like changing it up all that much. But I don't know. Yeah, that was pretty telling to see a Holstein get that call. And now, like, when you look at the roster, and I don't know if you've taken a look, I posted a projected 2 deep. That gold team, they've got Holstein. They've got Carter and Juelz Goff at running back. They've got Kenny Johnson, who was the first overall pick when the gold team had the first pick, which, sidebar. So Narduzzi, first of all, says, like, come out and do a paper, scissors, rock or something, which everybody laughed at him about calling it that. They're like, don't you mean rock, paper, scissors? So he had to do rock, paper, scissors. So it was Donovan McMillan and Brandon George playing rock, paper, scissors. But that wasn't for the first pick. It was for the right to call the coin toss, which was then for the first pick. And it was like, and then they flipped the coin and like they stared at it for a really long time. Like they weren't sure which side was tails. It was the strangest start to the draft. But anyway, gold team won the toss. They kept the first pick and they opened with the very first pick being Kenny Johnson, which I thought was pretty interesting too. Now, Kanate Mumfield was already off the board as seniors aren't available. Sincerely and Raphael Williams, I don't know if they would have gone ahead of Kenny Johnson, but they were off the board because they're injured. But given all the players that they could have chosen from and all the positions they could have picked from, the gold team with, again, Gavin Bartholomew and Daniel Carter went with Kenny Johnson. Should we read too much into that or think too much about that one?
I don't know. I mean, I've been pretty high on Kenny Johnson for a while now. I mean, I think he could have made more plays last year. I think they just struggled to get him the ball, but I think he's pretty electric, and I think he's going to do some good things this year. So first overall pick, yeah, that's a little surprising, but I mean, when you factor in all the seniors, I was shocked to see that you have a full injury report. That is something very, very, very new. So when you factor in like everyone that's kind of down and all the seniors off the board, I mean, I think he's one of their more talented players.
Well, to be fair on the injury thing, they've done this before. Of they'll tell us guys who aren't participating. You know what I mean? And particularly as it relates to the draft, like guys who are injured and not available to be drafted, they end up getting drafted to a team because whichever team wins gets steak and lobster, and whoever loses gets like hot dogs and beans or something like that. So, the injured guys all end up on a roster. So I think we've known about injured guys in the past. What was curious is that Pat Narduzzi was like, some of the guys he was announcing, he was like, Derek Davis, who's probable, or, Tamarian Crumpley is questionable. That was more details than he was willing to give. There were some other interesting ones. Defensive ends, David Ojebwe, the transfer from Clemson, went behind Jimmy Scott, Sincere Edwards, a true freshman, and Maverick Grazio. I thought that was kind of interesting. There were some further at defensive end, Zach Zollers, the walk-on, went before Antonio Kamen. There was Caleb Williams, a walk-on running back, went ahead of Montrevious Lloyd and Juelz Goff and Derek Davis. But again, like I said, Davis is kind of he's questionable there, injury-wise. I thought there was one or two others where a walk-on went ahead of a scholarship guy. Well, Josh Altman, walk-on tight end, who I think on Pitt's website is still listed as an offensive lineman, went ahead of Cole Mitchell. So that's not a strong endorsement for Cole Mitchell. Caden Smith, the walk-on wide receiver, went ahead of Lamar Seymour. No, Smith was at a different position, so that doesn't really count. But there were a handful of these spots where some, walk-ons went ahead. Did anything, as you kind of read over the draft order, did anything stand out to you? I thought the Ojebwe one was interesting, with Jimmy Scott, Sincere Edwards, and Maverick Grazio all ahead of a former four-star guy who transferred in from Clemson, presumably to be the guy, and he goes behind three other players.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to me. And, I wonder, did he miss time or something like that? I mean, you just never know. But I looked at the two defensive lines, and I think of all the positions, I kind of have them written down like side by side, blue versus gold. I think that's the most even one, is defensive line. I think you could make a case for either blue or gold there, because there's some interesting pieces on each side. So I don't know. I mean, have you kind of picked your favorite yet? Set a line, anything? I mean, I think I'm leaning towards gold, but
no, I think gold. I think gold for a couple of reasons. The one thing about the defensive line, is like three of the defensive tackles are questionable or probable or something. Like Sean Fitzsimmons and Francis Brew for the gold team, and Nikai Johnson for the blue team are all probable. So you'll see. We'll see. But even if Nikai Johnson doesn't play, Nick James and Isaiah Neal are still there for the blue team, and the gold team takes a hit. If they don't have Fitzsimmons and Brew, they end up with Elliott Donald and Will King. But they've got Dayon Hayes and Sincere Edwards on the outside. I take gold partially because of that, partially and largely because of the offensive line. The gold offensive line, left to right, is Jackson Brown, Jason Collier, Lyndon Cooper, BJ Williams, and Ryan Baer. The blue offensive line, left to right, is Ty Ray, Terrence Enos, Matt Altzman, Ryan Coretta, and Isaiah Montgomery. That's like three redshirt freshmen, a walk-on, and Terrence Enos. Whereas the gold has Jackson Brown's a redshirt sophomore, Jason Collier's a ninth-year senior, Lyndon Cooper is a transfer with experience, BJ Williams played all year last year, Ryan Baer's a returning starter. So they have guys out. There's four offensive linemen out, including Terrence Moore and Branson Taylor. But I think as they split up the offensive line, because they didn't draft those guys and they just kind of put one unit on one side, I think they pretty much put their first team offensive line on the gold team. So, Dayon Hayes and Sincere Edwards pass rushing for the gold against Ty Ray and Isaiah Montgomery. I'm going to give the edge to the gold there. And then you've got Eli Holstein throwing to Kenny Johnson and Gavin Bartholomew, as opposed to Yarnell is throwing to Kanate Mumfield, and kind of not much else. Cam Montero, Zion Fowler, Devin Whitlock, Lamar Seymour. These are the receivers for the blue team. Jake Overman, Jake Renda could make some plays, but I think the receivers are better and the offensive line is better for the gold. So that's my, I would pick them. I might even go kind of big. Might even set a big line, gold minus 8.5.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I could get behind that with the gold, because that is pretty clearly what their first team line is. I mean, I think Jackson Brown would be their top tackle off the bench if,
right.
Branson Taylor's down, Ryan Jacoby's down, Terrence Moore's down. So Collier and Cooper, those are the next two guys you would expect to see there. So, I mean, I think top to bottom, I think Blue's advantage is probably just having Nate Yarnell. But I mean, everywhere else, I mean, you can make a case that gold probably has a better unit overall. Maybe safety. I think blue might have safety. They have O'Brien and McIntyre.
Yeah, just by a little bit. I mean, I like the combo of Donovan McMillan and Jesse Anderson, but I mean, O'Brien and McIntyre are more experienced. Yeah, but I mean, Brandon George and Rasheem Biles is a nice duo at linebacker for Blue, but Gold has Kyle Lewis and Braylon Lovelace, which is a really good duo. You know what I mean? Like, I think the corners are pretty evenly matched. It's pretty even.
Mhm.
Blue has Ben Sauls, which I think helps.
That is a
He's
weapon.
pretty, yeah, he'll get some points for them, but overall, yeah, it's the offensive line. I mean, that's what I think kind of separates these two. And um, somebody, let me see here. Peninsula P asked, is Eli Holstein a dual threat quarterback? I wouldn't necessarily call him dual threat, but I think he can run a little bit. There have been people saying things like Tim Tebow-esque. I it's hard for me to say that because Tim Tebow was so many things, and I don't think Eli Holstein is all of those things. But I think he is a pretty decent athlete for a guy his size. There was always the rumors that Alabama was trying to move him to tight end or something. I think he has that kind of athleticism. So if you would consider a quarterback who can run like a tight end to be a dual threat quarterback, then yes. Unfortunately, I think on Saturday, we're not going to see much of whatever he can do with his legs, right? Because Pat Narduzzi's going to blow the whistle. He's not going to let him get into the open field. He's not going to let him try and run away from tackles or shed tackles. He's a big guy. I mean, he's solidly put together. He is built like a tight end. And I think he could probably break some tackles and shed some tackles and keep running, but he's not going to get an opportunity to do that on Saturday. So is he a dual threat quarterback? I would not call him that. Is he a guy who can maybe keep a play alive and run around and maybe break a tackle and keep moving and look downfield? I think so. I think that's what his game is. But obviously, we haven't seen him play anywhere for like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I would say dual threat in the sense like that Kenny Pickett was. Like, it's not like Kenny Pickett was having any design runs, but he could go up and get a first down, keep the play alive. I mean, I think that's kind of more what Holstein is.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But just a little bigger than Kenny. Um, Joey Dealey says, "What do you think about Elliott Donald? Is he going to start, or do you not know?" I mean, if I had to put money on it, I don't think he starts. You know what I mean? I think Sean Fitzsimmons starts. I think, we've talked about it before. Like, it looks like Nikai Johnson seems to be doing well at defensive tackle. So maybe he could be a starter. Nick James, the transfer, Isaiah Neal, the sophomore or redshirt freshman. I mean, I think there's a lot of options. Donald is in that competition, but I haven't heard much about him. I mean, there's guys that I hear about. There's guys that people talk about. There's guys that people praise, the coaches and the players, but he hasn't been one other than to say like, yeah, he's somebody said he's playing with confidence. He's a little more mature. It's not, nobody's saying, boy, Elliott Donald's making a lot of plays. And he's like a redshirt junior now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to say time's running out, but it's not whatever the opposite of time running out is.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to expect from him this season, and I think part of that is just with the coaching change. Like I know like Charlie Partridge had a big rotation, and we knew he liked to rotate a lot. I don't know how it's going to look with Tim Dawes. I don't know if he's going to rotate as liberally as the way Charlie did. So I mean, he's in the conversation. He's going to have a chance to play, but I don't know if he's going to be in that top two though.
Yeah, I would have to. For as much as they've talked about how they want to be aggressive with the defensive line and they want to attack with the defensive line, they want to get after it and play vertical and all this stuff. I mean, you're going to have to rotate. I don't think you can keep guys, out there for extended periods, but somebody's got to step up and actually be able to do it and be willing to do it. I kind of think we'll see some youth at some of these spots. Like I think Isaiah Neal will be in the mix. I think Sincere Edwards could be in the mix. Francis Brew is probable for Saturday, so we'll see what he can do. But I mean, he'll be healthy for the fall. They're going to need some youth to step up. You know what I mean? Whether it's like Jimmy Scott is a redshirt sophomore now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some older guys, Nate Matlack, Bam Brema, Dalen Hayes, but like you're going to have, even if you have Hayes and Matlack starting at defensive end, you're going to need depth there. And whether it's like Sincere Edwards or Jimmy Scott, I mean, these are younger guys. I think you'll see a bit of a youth movement on defense. And I think that's a good thing. I'm really curious, though, how they'll do in stopping the run because, particularly up the middle, like they're small.
Yeah.
I mean, like they're just not big guys. There's a lot of 265-pound guys, 270-pound guys. And that's far bigger than anything you or I could move. But against, ACC offensive linemen, I'm afraid there are going to be holes against these D line because, if you're going to be undersized, you've got to have like quickness and strength, like, Aaron Donald and, Kalijah Cansey had. And I don't know if there's an Aaron Donald or Kalijah Cansey in this group. They keep talking up Nikai Johnson, but I'm not really sure if he's at that level. So I like the pass rush might improve this year, but I don't know about the run defense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. And I mean, the one thing about that room is if you look at them, they're all very talented. They were all four-star recruits for the most part. I don't think Sean Fitzsimmons was, but I think almost every other guy in that rotation was a four-star. So there's ability there, but I could see them getting pushed around a little. I mean, they're like Sean Fitzsimmons and Isaiah Neal are. I mean, I'm taller than them. like I'm, they're obviously a lot stronger, but I'm taller than them. So I mean, that's just something to consider.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting. One thing Pat Narduzzi's brought up a few times is about how their sack numbers were down last year, but part of it was because teams were running on them so much. And he doesn't say that like, oh, our run defense was bad. He says that like teams weren't worried about trying to run up the score because they knew that Pitt's offense couldn't score. And so they're like, well, if this team's not going to score, we'll just keep running the ball. If we get ahead by 7 or 14, that'll be enough because we know they're never going to be able to really threaten us. And so I went and looked and like, just on a pure raw numbers kind of standpoint of, just percentage of total plays. Pitt's opponents they ran the ball like 60 or 61% of the time. On 60 or 61% of their plays last year went as rushing attempts. Now, some of those are sacks or kneel downs or whatever. But you compare that to previous years, it was like 48% or 50%, maybe 52%. So it was a considerable jump. And it wasn't really something I ever thought about, that teams could be a little more conservative against Pitt because there was just no threat from Pitt's offense to ever really kind of cut into a lead or stretch a lead or take a lead. And so maybe that led to fewer sacks. I don't entirely buy that. I think the defensive line was pretty unproductive last year as it is. I don't think they were all that great even in passing situations. So I don't totally buy that. But if they, maybe part of it will come down to the threat of the offense again. But if this defense shows some cracks, particularly up front in stopping the run, you could end up with a similar situation in low sack numbers because other teams are able to run the ball on them, which would be a pretty big problem because I think the linebackers are good. I think the safeties are good. We'll see about the corners, but they need a push up front, and they're kind of unproven, particularly in the interior.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that the run defense has to get better. I mean, because he could talk about all he wants, but it still goes back to that Syracuse game. Like they just decided that
Yeah.
they were just going to push you around with a backup tight end. I mean, like that's what they did. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure the numbers were skewed in some regards, but at other times teams just flat out challenged them and they couldn't stop them. I think Virginia Tech did a similar thing to them.
Yep.
Syracuse did it. So I mean, there does need to be a better just improvement in stopping the run. I don't think it comes down to numbers. I mean, like those were two instances where the other team just challenged you and you couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they probably felt confident in challenging because they weren't worried about Pitt's offense, but you gotta stop them. You got to find a way to make a stop. What are you looking forward to the most on Saturday? What are you looking forward to seeing, players or whatever? What's most interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a bummer, like because we've been talking up some guys like this whole time, and like they're not playing. Like Cruz
Yes.
Brookins has been the talk of camp, and he's not going to be out on the field, so everyone's going to be like, "What are you guys talking about? Why?" So he has stickers on his helmet. That's all. That all it was. So I don't know. But I'm excited to see Kenny Johnson. Like if he was the number one pick, I want to see what he can do in the open field. I mean, I look at tight end, like Gavin Bartholomew should play maybe what 5 plays total, if that. So like
Yeah.
let's see who the other tight end is behind him. I mean, I think they're going to have 2 tight end sets. So I think that's interesting. And I'm with Rodney Hammond, that's another one where he doesn't need to play in a spring game. Like he's good. Like you can wrap Rodney Hammond and bubble wrap until the season starts. So like I'm interested to see what the running backs do. I mean, we've heard a lot of great things about Joel Goff. I think Reed's an interesting playmaker just because he's the only Western Carolina transfer playing. The other 2 are not. So, and yeah, we can see if Derek Davis can maybe make a step up this year. So I think running back is definitely an interesting spot in tight end, just because you can't have Gavin Bartholomew getting hurt in this game.
No, and that takes a little bit of the shine off the gold team. Actually, maybe I'll have to lower that number because you're right. Maybe I'll move it down to 6.5. Because you're right, he's not going to play much, and nor should he. But when he goes out, that leaves them with Josh Altman and Adam Howanitz, whose name is remarkably close to Adam Horowitz, who was MCA in. Wait, was he MCA or Ad Rock? Anyway, MCA. Right? In the BC Boys? Come on, Jim. Help me out.
I'm not
a BC Boys, guys? Oh,
no.
Man. You're missing out. Anyway, when Gavin Bartholomew's out, it's down to 2 walk-ons at tight end. So that takes away some of the weapons for Eli Holstein. I think Holstein is one of the most interesting guys to see if he really has passed Christian Bear. How does he look? What does he do? Is he able to get the ball to the receivers? He's obviously not going to be able to really break contain and run for a first down or anything like that, but can he get the ball to Kenny Johnson? Can he get the ball to Dejon Reynolds, to Israel Polk, to Jake McConaughey? This is the kind of game where a guy like McConaughey can really make some plays. There's always some walk-ons who show up. Last couple minutes, do you have any predictions on the Ed Conway Award for most improved player of spring?
I thought we did this last week, didn't we? And
we
weren't sure. Like, does it count like from the end of the season or from the start of the first spring practice?
Yeah. I don't know. I never got an answer on that. Never asked.
Maybe I'll ask on Saturday. I'm not. I don't know. Why don't you pick yours and I'll pick mine?
No. This was a question I asked you. I don't know because I'm still in the same spot where I'm like, I don't really like. I could probably pick like 5 different guys that I wouldn't be surprised if they choose on defense, but I don't know who, like on offense. Like I don't know who the standout guys are on offense. Other than the obvious, Gavin's good, Kenny Johnson's good, Rodney Hammond's pretty good, Kanate, whatever. But like, there's no like Cruz Brookins or Jesse Anderson equivalent on offense. Of a guy who's just gotten talked up a lot this spring and he's just making so many plays and all this. Like, the other day, Narduzzi said Desmond Reed's really tough and he can break a long run. But it's not like it hasn't been the same sort of consistent effusive praise that guys like Brookins and Anderson and even like a Braylon Lovelace have been getting. And so it's pretty tough to like guess on this stuff. I really don't know. Nakai could get it 2 years in a row on defense, particularly after switching positions. It would make more sense this year than it did last year. But I have no idea on offense.
It would be ideal if like one of the 2 like starting linemen playing or getting it. Like if it was like BJ Williams or Ryan Bear. I mean, I think that would be a good sign if one of them kind of like took a step forward going into their sophomore year. So I don't have a good pick because like all the big names, all the guys that all the hype or whatever has been on defense. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's tough. Well, I guess we'll have some surprises then. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to all the coverage from Acrisure Stadium on Saturday from the Blue Gold game. Of course, we'll have it right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. In the morning pit on Monday, we'll have a full recap of the spring game, everything we saw, everything that stood out, and certainly I know Pitt fans will have a lot to talk about. From this is a chance to go see the team, and so you can and go see the team with the the opportunity to then post about it afterward, because all the Alliance 412 members who went to the scrimmage last Saturday weren't allowed to post anything, but this time everybody can go see it and post about it on the message boards after the game, and people will definitely be doing that at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you go to the game on Saturday and then share with everyone what you thought, and we'll all have lots of conversation about it for the next 5 months until the season actually starts. But thanks for tuning in tonight. We appreciate everybody who did. Thanks to you, Jim, for hanging out for an hour. It's been a lot of fun. You guys have a good rest of the night. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We'll be back with another morning pit tomorrow morning, getting you ready for the Blue Gold game. We'll have a mailbag on Friday, and then lots of stuff throughout the week and the weekend heading into next week. So thanks again. Hope you have a great Wednesday night. Good rest of the week. We'll talk to you tomorrow for the morning pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.